Thank you very much. My office has been receiving a lot of calls about the quality of the cell service in Guyana, particularly in relation to GT&T. Thousands of people, literally, when I checked, have been complaining about drop WhatsApp calls, etc. And it seems as though the Public Utilities Commission is asleep, and the minister is more interested in making excuses rather than looking out for the interests of the Guyanese public and the consumers of that service. So it was brought to my attention that Cathy Hughes said that it was the People's Progressive Party that extended GT&T's monopoly for 20 years. Well, any independent observer or analyst, if they go back to the origins of the contract, they can learn something about why APNU behaves the way it does today. In 1990, we had the PNC in office. Is there something? Like a bird is in here, trap? Oh, it's outside. Oh, okay. I was wondering if a bird is trapped there. If we go back to 1990, you would find that APNU rushed to privatize a number of state entities without any public tender, as they are doing even now since they resumed office. They have privatized large numbers of buildings, tracts of land, without any public tender. Contrast that with the years we've been in office, where all the privatization arrangements have been put in a document and published and tabled before the National Assembly. GT&T was one of those. Without any public tender, they called in a company and sold 80% of the Guyana Telecommunications Corporation to that company for $16 million. And the company, GTC, had a large bank account, maybe about $5 million already in the account or in receivables. So effectively, the company paid about $10, $11 million for 80% of GTC. That company in the first year made more money, more than what they paid in revenue. And so we always complained about it. It was a corrupt transaction, we believe, but a pretty unusual one. Now, in that transaction, you had 40 years monopoly for the company, 40 years from 1990, and also they had a situation where the company was entitled to 6% of gross revenue, unheard of anywhere in the world. So I'm just taking you back into history, because people like Cathy Hughes and the others were pathological liars. Behind this fiend sophistication, when they go to meetings and press conferences, they behave upright. It's a very nasty layer, a layer that when you expose will point out, like how Cathy Hughes approved contracts in our own ministries to our own companies, and now again lying on the PPP, saying we gave the monopoly, we extended the monopoly for GT&T. Now, what I believe, something went wrong, because we were on the verge of ending the monopoly through negotiations. Then the Parliament met and passed a bill to liberalize the sector, and all that Cathy Hughes has to do is to sign the order to liberalize the sector. But I read a Guyana, the Morar Waves story that there is a secret agreement on the taxes between the company and the government that we don't know of. And so today, when the service is so poor and people complain, they blame the People's Progressive Party. But I think Cathy Hughes is the one to be blamed. And we need to ask her why she did not, based on what they promised to do, liberalize the telecommunication sector. That was part of our manifesto in 2015. We didn't get to implement it. Its liberalization of the sector is high on our agenda again. And then Cathy, the same Cathy Hughes, takes credit for the ICT hubs. Granger boasts about these, even in his letter to people. But we left 17.2 million US dollars to effect that program that they're just implementing. So somebody needs to expose the lying nature of Cathy Hughes. Absolutely lying. It's pathological now with this government. The second thing I want to talk a bit about is the police and elections generally. So, as you're aware, we made a presentation to GECOM. We had raised certain issues about the unfair treatment of some communities. And we gave several examples. We pointed out that in January, a proposal went from the staff of GECOM to the commission. The commission looked at that proposal and it was sent to us. We thought that was the list of polling places. To our surprise, a week and a half ago, we heard that there was another list, never saw it. So Zulfikar Mustafa had to go to Lowenfield's office and say to him, I'm not leaving unless I get this list. To our surprise, there had been a major alteration of polling places, and most of these have been done in traditional PPP strongholds. So when we raised the issue, the chairperson of GECOM, and then that was repeated by Mr. Alexander, said this was a recommendation of the Carter Center. Now, we asked the Carter Center whether they said at any point in time that GECOM in the 2015 report or recently, nothing happened recently, not a single thing recently, that is after January, but GECOM was referring to the 2015 report. So, and there were lots of recommendations in the Carter Center report, none of which have been implemented. But they claim that the Carter Center said to do that you had to remove private residences. Carter Center said, we never mentioned the word private residence in the report. So what they have in their report are politically neutral places, but not private residences. So we argued that you have to have some changes. Congestion would take place in some areas. We made the case. I don't want to go back over that case again. And then the commission agreed, and the chair of the commission called the executive secretary of the party and said, we have agreed to your proposal, which is 6 additional polling places in Monrepo, 4 in Fowles, 1 in Friendship, and 1 in Chesney. And so we said, fine, if that was done, we're happy. Now, I made it clear at the GECOM meeting, we are not telling you which polling place or which home to choose. you go and choose any home. You can even put up a tent in the village, or you can use a place of worship, but that's purely at the discretion of GCOM, because we don't want them to say we suggesting whose place they should use. But just that it be in the village, so the people from Fowles don't have to vote in Paradise or in Mon Repos. Not all of them have to vote at one place, one location, 7,000 people. So we thought it's fair. Everybody agreed. The advisors were there. So yesterday we started getting some strange vibes. And this morning we saw a deliberate attempt by GCOM staff to frustrate this. We heard, oh, the commission never agreed to that. But the chair called us and said, your proposal had been agreed. And this is very worrying from a few staff in there. There were 3 persons. We have brought this to the attention and their names to the observers and the advisors, who will frustrate every decision of the commission. That's their work for the commission. And they're trying to frustrate that. No doubt they got instructions from APNU, because the 3 commissioners from APNU were not happy with this at all. They don't mind the people being disadvantaged. So I had to point out, they started making a lot of issues about private residences, and I had to point out that in an area on the East Bank, like Samantha Point, Caneville, Grove area, 2,000 voters, and you have 6 polling places in private residences there. So why can't you have 6 additional polling places in Mon Repos, in any residence, not just a private, but even in a church or a tent, to cater for 7,000 voters? It's just not fair. So I saw a statement from APNU. Obviously, they don't want this to happen. They want the congestion to take place. They want the voters from Fowles to go to Paradise. So they said, oh, there was unusual voting patterns in these private residences in 2015. But I know in South Georgetown there were unusual voting patterns too. So if that's the case, who do you blame? The residents, the building is not the problem. It's the staff of GCOM that, if they're not involved in transgressions or wickedness, then you wouldn't have a problem. So GCOM, the presiding officers who were placed there, and the police, were done by GCOM, not by the PPP. So if there was any problem, they should go to the staff that they placed there. And if there's, we have urged them to call in the police if any of the staff act in an unprofessional manner. But clearly, it's a red herring by the PNC. I saw APNU put out some statements, and the commissioners and Vincent Alexander going into like overdrive because he was opposed to this. In the face of all the evidence, in the face of a fairness argument, he's still opposed to this because he's part of a plot to disenfranchise PPP voters. So now we're still struggling. After yesterday, we thought the issue is resolved. Finally, we're moving forward. We're struggling now because the staff, or 3 members of staff, are refusing to comply with the commission's decision. Now, if that happens on elections day, just imagine what will happen. And that is why we plan to brief the observers and the advisors about the behavior of some of these staff members, so that they know their names and faces very early, and to pay attention to what they're doing. So we are tackling that issue. I raised this other concern recently, yesterday when I spoke with the media, or not yesterday, the day before yesterday, about the police's readiness. And I pointed out that to the observers, that when there is fear about the readiness of the security forces to maintain law and order and protect the polling places, that they too have an obligation to secure assurances from the leadership of both the Army and the police. And the reason I could speak authoritatively on this matter, because I too headed an observer group, and I've done exactly that in Sri Lanka. I had to meet with the head of the police and the head of the army to get these assurances from them. And so I've urged them to do the same thing, because from what we are hearing is that there are lots of interference by Winston Felix and Paul Slow. Now, Paul Slow is supposed to be in charge of a body that is not partisan. He's the chairman of the Police Service Commission. You recall Granger trying to remove Carville Duncan from another commission, the Public Service Commission, on the claims that he may be partisan. Carville Duncan is not a member of the People's Progressive Party. Carville Duncan is not part of our campaign. Yet Granger sought his removal and said to him he doesn't want blood on his carpet. Illegally removed him. And now we have another chairman of a commission, independent commission, who is part of the APNU campaign and assigned to Region 3. So this will have an impact on partiality of police members, or try to intimidate the police force. If you have a chairman of the commission who is responsible for your promotions, etc., people will feel that they have to comply with his wishes. So we want assurances that they are in a state of readiness. I've heard issues about vehicles not being ready, the training not done properly, that they're saying they're not going to use rural constables. They're going to only use police, that if that decision is taken, that there has to be adequate numbers of police for each polling place, not to assign one police to 3 or 4 polling places. That will compromise safety and security. Now, we're not telling them who to assign where and which, if they should use rural constable or not, but they have to give assurances to the public that they will act impartially and deal with these matters. And especially Maxine Graham, who I gather now has been in charge, or been placed in charge over the operations of the police force on this day. But she is not the one who has to give the assurances. It's the Commissioner of Police on this issue. I thought I'd just bring that to the attention because the public, because this is a matter we have raised with the observers. I met with all the observer groups, had long discussions with them about a whole range of issues apart from these. Outside of these issues, we raised with the Commission and the observer groups the integrity of the statement of poll from the time it is sealed in an envelope. So we made it clear, first of all, that the CEO cannot give instructions only verbally, because if that were to happen, then presiding officers would, in a partisan manner or a capricious manner, interpret his advice the way they want to. So we urge that every advice to presiding officer be shared with all the parties or all polling day staff. So share it first of all with all the political parties, and then do posters to post in every polling place so everyone knows what their rights are and what their responsibilities are. Up to recently, we have had on D-Day, that is when Discipline for Services voted, we had some presiding officers who were saying that the PPP cannot affix their seal to some of the documents, the envelopes. Now, that's provided for by the law. It's in the law. Yet, some of them said this. So we want this in black and white. We want to say that here are the things that people are allowed to do. Polling agents of parties can place their seals on the box and the envelopes, including the one that contains the statement of poll. Presiding officers can accompany the deputy RO to the and follow the box and the statement of poll until it's handed over to the RO. That's provided for by law too. So not on that one day somebody say, you can't come behind me or you can't affix the seal. We want, when the RO receives these envelopes, a fixed time is set for the recount. So parties don't have to call and find out, and they can start the count without the parties. We have argued that if a fixed time is set, say 2 a.m. in the morning, all the observers will show up there and all the party agents at that time, and they know beforehand. So it's their responsibility to be there. So even if they don't receive all the statements of poll, at least they can postpone it with everybody there, knowing that. What the practice in the past has been there, you have to keep calling the RO. And the RO could easily start by saying, I'm not getting on to the PPP. But when they have not called us. So we've asked for that. Because a number of people have already made this proposal, and I think the Commission was considering that already. Then the sealed envelopes with the statements of poll are open in front of all the party agents and the observers, and the count, the tabulation takes place. The reason that you need to keep the integrity of the statements intact, you recall the last elections, they said fake statements of poll got into the system. And we asked that the police be called in. So we are saying, how now, let's avoid that. So if you have seal envelopes and it's open in front of everyone, then you would avoid this happening. Once that is done, then the RO has to make the declaration. The CEO can then treat those as preliminary declarations and do his parallel verification, and then the final result is declared. But people know very early, because at the regions you have the declaration, and that is provided for by law. It's the ROs who make the declarations in their districts, the 10 districts. And so people will know pretty early, but they also know these are preliminary results that have to be verified by a parallel process at the Commission. So we spoke at length about that clarity, and the country must know this. This must not be esoteric knowledge only in the CEO's head. It must be put in a document and publicized, shared with the media, with the political parties and everyone, so that the country knows what is going to happen. And any departure, then people can hold those responsible for the departure. They can face the consequences of the law. So that was one big issue. We have found other types of issues in the packing, but I believe we can resolve those. We do have in some cases, like in Region 1 now, short ballots, because the polling day officials who are coming from outside of the area, they would have a certificate of employment. So if they pack the exact number of ballots, and in these small villages, and everyone votes, because they're tiny villages, there wouldn't be enough ballots for those 3 or 4 persons who go in to vote with certificate of employment. But I believe that could be resolved. One bigger issue that we're working to get resolved is that they use the list, the official list of electors, to start the packing. And so that when they pack for several regions, they realized that in Region 4, that they will run short of ballots because they did not discount or strike off from that list all of those who voted on D-Day, that's joint services. So by that time, most of the regions had been packed. So you have over 8,000 joint services members who voted on that day. The official list should have been adjusted down by the 8,000 joint services member so that they don't get to vote again, they strike them off. And then the box is packed on the basis of that revised list, or the list minus the joint services member. So now in many boxes, you're going to have extra ballots there. And GECOM has to find a way of adjusting in those boxes the ballots. So we're paying careful attention to that. You could potentially have between 4,000 to 5,000 ballots floating around, extra ballots floating around in the system. And those need to be either at the staging area, because the boxes have been packed already at the staging area. The adjustment needs to be made there in the presence of the activists from the political parties and the observers. So that is one issue that has to be addressed, because we don't want extra votes floating around. As I said before, there are many operational issues, but I don't think they can be resolved between discussions of the party and GECOM itself. But we're paying a lot of attention to the logistics too. That places are not short-packed or overpacked, that all of the material is in place. And then the second thing too is that the list, the struck off names, has to be placed in the box now. So if you keep that list that has been placed in the box, the OLE, then a person, and you don't have the list that were adjusted for joint services vote, people can then show up back and vote. So it's not just the ballot, but the extra ballots, but also the list reflecting that adjustment. That is a crucial issue for us. I want to urge people not to succumb to intimidation or campaigns to spread fear that's done through the internet. That I have noticed a proliferation in the past few days of voice notes by people who claim to have knowledge of some act of rigging, and that APNU in all those scenarios will prevail because they are going to rig in some area, etc. Any person who has that information, and there are lots of people who will be calling us with information that we are verifying, would not put it in a voice note and release it to the public, especially if they're pro-PPP. They will send it to us. And many people have been sending things quietly that we're checking. These notes are, voice notes, are cleverly crafted. They're run in studios, and they are designed to create unease in the electorate. And they all show an outcome that is APNU winning. So they would say, oh, APNU has a plan to rig the elections, and here are some elements of it. Now that's designed to say to APNU supporters, oh, don't worry, show up, our party has this locked. And when it's not true. And it's also designed to get to PPP supporters who will then say, oh, if APNU has it locked already, they have a plan, might as well not show up to the poll. so could affect turnout. I urge people, don't be fooled, don't be duped by these things. Anyone who has that sort of information would share it privately, not put it in a voice note and circulate it. It's a campaign. It is a campaign. And it's designed to intimidate. And it's going to get worse as we go along. And it's coming from APNU. They're desperate. Really, really, really desperate. I know that. We've seen the desperation in many, many areas, and the desperation is reflected in all of these issues. So I urge people not to pay too much attention to these issues. I was on Essequibo Coast yesterday, and they told me that the minister who campaigns at people's funeral went into Kabakaburi, and they drop off some solar panels, but they didn't drop off anything to implement it. And I'm just thinking how funny it is that the 13,000 solar panels that we bought and left in 2015, and the 2,000 odd computers that were supposed to go to 100 hubs in the Amerindian communities were all kept in Georgetown, given out to cronies, and the solar panels never hit the hinterland or the riverine areas. They never put in place those 100 hubs. We left the 17.2 million for the ICT. Only now they're doing a bit of that. And now you're going to drop in a truckload of solar panels and believe that people would forget that, what you've done. And this is the desperation I see in them. The desperation reflects itself in lots of things. So the youth rallies that they had 1,000 youth rallies nearly, and all of them are hustle. First of all, the people who are organizing these things are using state funds, and they're inflating the costs. And if you ask the promoters in Guyana, they know who are organizing this. There are a few who are very high up in APNU. They're making a hustle on these youth rallies. So they're bringing in these foreign artists, inflating the contract price, giving the people less, but bringing in the foreign artists. But they have to do this. When they had a youth rally in Paradise, and they had a tiny group of people. And when I look at the entire front, they have to be more than 65 years, the whole at the youth rally. The entire front of the youth rally. But that in APNU is still very young in this leadership. So it's a relative thing. It's always relative. And so they had one on MASH Day and by the tarmac, the cultural center, failure. They had one the night before in front of their campaign headquarters, another failure. So now they have some youth explosions and all of these things around the country. I don't even remember the name. Oh, youth version, youth crank up. I don't know what they're cranking up here. I see the crank up now. Foreign Jamaica, out of Jamaica, bringing in the artists again in Linden and in New Amsterdam. Because nobody wants to go and listen to them speak. That's the only way they will get a message in. Nobody wants to listen to them speak. They're desperate. And so this is paid for by taxpayers. And this is the only way that young people, because they just abandon young people. You think this sport, a little sport now, will detract people's mind from they don't have a plan for jobs. They don't have a plan for jobs now. Granger talks all around the place. Oh, I've been providing jobs. But where is his plan? Zero. Lost 30,000. They have no plan to reduce cost of living. That affects young people too. No plan to reverse all the taxes on vehicles so that a young person can own a vehicle or remove the restriction. On cell phone, on data, young people buy that. On education, no scholarship in their entire manifesto, their pamphlet, 20,000 scholarships we're offering. Nothing there for young people too. nothing for low-income housing for young people. They need a house lot. Instead of giving them house lots, they've given out 60,000 acres to 10 of their people. As we speak here, they've given to a private developer. They're turning sod now today on the east coast of Demerara for a private developer whom obviously was another corrupt transaction. We don't know how many acres he got. But those are lands that we have to put in the housing, for low-income housing. We'll take it all back. Take it all back. That's what. What are they going to say to young people? So crank up, because Jack there put a couple of us in garbage bags, and that's it. That is the only thing they got. So that is why I said huge desperation in their camp. And now we've seen a woman's rally. So this woman's rally thing, first of all, the Department of Energy is buying all this stuff and branding them green. Department of Energy using money, our money, and some of the foreign money from a loan to buy stuff for this and produce ads for this women's rally. But guess who? Well, I see they pulled off the Ferguson from the rally. They don't want her to speak. She's gone from there. But if you roll out of Valda Lawrence, oh God, she's giving the feature address. They couldn't find another more credible young lady. I'm sure they have many in APNU than Valda Lawrence, who's been an utter failure, who's been fingered in the $605 million deal with Ansa McCall. Who has been in a partisan way, made some very partisan statements about who will get work and who wouldn't get work and who look like whom. And a person who just recently stood on a platform and urged people to break the law by congregating around polling places. And that is what they offer to the women. Why didn't all of them stand up for women when they and their husbands lost jobs in the sugar belt and they couldn't feed their families? Why didn't they say something to those women? Why didn't they say something to the 1,792 Amerindians? Or 1,762, I think. I got a number of. And who lost their jobs? Many of them, maybe 1,000 of them were young Amerindian women. Why didn't they stand up for them? Why didn't they stand up for women, all of this bunch, when Granger took away the 10,000 grant from their children? In 5 years, that's $8 billion he took away from their children. Why didn't they stand up when Granger put VAT on sanitary napkins or baby formula or diapers or foodstuff or electricity or water? Women bear the brunt of this too. Why didn't they stand up? Now they need a women's rally to say how much you love women in this country when your policies have been devastating the workforce right here in the city. There are lots of women who can't find employment. Granger promised the kids at university, the young women too, 1 year after you graduate, I'll find you a job, and then said it's not his responsibility anymore. I can go down the long list of broken promises to women. And suddenly, now they're getting a rally for women paid for by the taxpayers. It's just obscene. That's the only word I can find. Obscene, and it smacks of desperation. That smacks of desperation. They've started prayer sessions too. The prayer sessions are another one. Everybody religious now. They're praying all over the country. All of these who's been hustling money. Ferguson, and by the way, she tried to muzzle me, and thankfully the court did not allow her to muzzle me because of I said that she got a plot of land with several house lots there. And she built that house in 2 years, within 2 years of being in office. We have a ton of cases where all of the corruption, every minister, I can go down the long list, they sold us out. And you're now going to start praying where the leaders in the communities who are praying with them should say to them, you should go to hell for the corruption too. Should say that to some of them, because it's all a gimmick, not genuine. They were not praying all along. Now suddenly they're going to pray because they want a chance, an audience with people to show up at the prayer sessions. This, they even got, let me tell you how desperate it is. So people have been calling me and saying we're receiving lots of calls from a company saying they're hiring people. When we traced it, it's fictitious. So people will think that they're going to get jobs that we are hiring now. They created a thing to call a lot of young people, just call them and say, you're going to get a job, can you come to an interview next week, and stuff like that. So they build a little hope in young people. Thousands of people are getting this call from a fictitious company, no such foreign company. That's the desperation, like what they're doing with house lots, giving people a little slip of paper now and saying, oh, you can pay afterwards, here is your allocation. But people don't know where the land is as yet, just here a broad area. This is all acts of desperation. So this is crucial. As I said before, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by all these last-minute things. Like NISIL paid the salary for the workers in a private company. This is unprecedented, but I'm glad they did it. Unprecedented that the government will pay the salary for a private company, the workers of the private company. But what do you think will happen next month? They pay it for this month because they want the people to vote for them. What happens next month? They will not get anything from this government. Nothing, because that's how they treat people. They're only doing it for votes. They're only doing it. So if the people there believe that this is done out of goodwill, it's done only for votes. So I just want to deal with one thing. I see this letter now. This is another letter going from Granger to everybody. By the way, they gave out people's name and addresses and their GPO. Another is helping him too, not a state agency. But you should read the nonsense in this letter. If I receive a letter like this, and people should do that, don't put Granger in the garbage bag like what he's saying. Put the letter in the garbage bag, based on what they said. Put this in your garbage bag. It's utter nonsense. He said they made great strides in healthcare, safety, and security. Healthcare now, we don't have drugs in the hospital. Infant mortality has gone up. Maternal mortality has gone up. We had over 650 murders. They talk as though they don't have any murders now. They know who killed the guy there, the person there in Camberville, I think it was. The police and others know this, but he's very close to them, so they're covering it up. They're covering it up. Imagine that happening, and they got political instructions to do that. If that had happened under the PPP, you would have chaos here. But they're doing that. He talks about his 5Bs program in a letter, and 90% of this country has not seen his bicycle, his boats, his buses, or whatever else. But he writes about you're benefiting from that. But he took away $8 billion in 1B. That is well, that wasn't even a B. That was the school kids grant. $8 billion he took away from them. And he boasts about how he is helped with books and breakfast. And he talks about the ICT hubs that the PPP left the money for. Talks about youth empowerment. Is he still on this world or in Guyana? And then he says, I'll give a cash grant to every family with a child in school. Now, if this is not a sign of either forgetfulness or duplicity, lying, blatant lie, dishonesty, nothing is. Because this is the guy who took away the cash grant to the children, and now he says, I'll give your child a cash grant. And if it's coming from oil, it can't come from oil, because in their manifesto, or what they claim there, to get any cash grant, you have to do a feasibility study first, or a pilot study, to see if people will get it. This is a letter that should be thrown in the garbage. Thrown in the garbage. No vision in it. Doesn't say a word about how he gave away billions of dollars in the oil and gas contract. This one thing Granger has to answer before the elections is, how did he allow ExxonMobil to write the negotiating brief for his government to negotiate with Exxon? And he can't say he doesn't know this or lie about it, because his company that he hired said that, put that in their report. And the company said it went to the cabinet, and he chairs the cabinet. So he needs to give answers to that. Not a word about oil and gas and the giveaway that they sold us out. Nothing here. No vision for development. Nothing about jobs. And he writes a letter like this. Nothing about his plans for the future. This letter is a total waste of time. The same usual stuff that we've had. And then they've rolled out, the last thing I deal with is the rolling out of some new people now, right? So you're going to face this. I'm very disappointed with some people in the media, people who presented themselves as fair. So, but we've seen how people change when you get closer to elections. Some people, they can't hide the hatred on their face when they ask you a question. A reporter was asking me a question and a couple of days ago, and I thought like she wanted to kill me. You see the tone of, you know, you could easily ask me a question, any question. We don't hide from questions. But you've seen it with Gordon Mosley. Recently, Mosley made a post that only people of one kind, I don't know what that means, he or she should do it, can get into the newspapers. And he's cheered on by the Enrico Wolford, who there's no diversity, nothing at the NCN. I was going to Essequibo Coast, I saw a program running, a government program on a government station. Everything was about APNU AFC and their colors. Even the news program had the colors of the party. He talks about diversity. I've seen this. And then others who were supposed to be like just fair, like I saw yesterday an ambush, and I have to speak about this, of one of our former, MPs, Joe Hamilton, went on a program, because we're invited there, that Gordon Mosley runs. And then they brought in a Juanita Euborn, who is a public relations officer for the Ministry of Finance. And they just ambushed him with a bunch of lies. So Jordan, she defended Jordan. Jordan did say, you check the Kite Shore News, Jordan did say, we never requested, nor did we receive a signing bonus. So Juanita Euborn was lying yesterday when she said Jordan never said that. Can give her the exact quote and try to say that our MP, Joe Hamilton, was lying. Switch the whole thing because they're defending the corruption. Jordan did say he didn't know how they got the $18 million, how they negotiated that. He doesn't know. He is part of the cabinet but doesn't know. He then, Jordan said, he thought it was a gift. And that is what they are trying to defend yesterday. But as I said before, people have the so-called independents have come off, and now you see people's true colors. So this morning I saw the same person saying that when people vote, they have to vote now because in the last 4.5 years there been no shooting on the street between drug dealers and police. And I wanted to say to her, it's because the drug dealers are in government now, that Patterson brother was caught with over 2 kilograms of cocaine, and he didn't get a single day in jail. He didn't get a single day in jail. You let the people, anyone else, get caught with a little spliff like that. They go for 3 years in jail for having a little tiny bit of marijuana. But he, over 2 kilograms of cocaine. And that's Patterson's brother. And he was part of the infamous cabal. You read that email that went around. The cabal, how they were parting up the spoils of government. How they were parting up, and which fake companies they were creating to funnel business to. Until now, they have a ton of this funneling business. So that happened. And I wanted to say to her, not a single day have we taken the sides of anyone criminal when they were shooting at the police force or our army. Like they did when people were shooting, killed 25 policemen, and our soldiers shot at our soldiers, wounding them. We never draped the coffin of any such criminal who shot and killed policemen and our soldiers with a national flag. That is why you have a different environment today. They used to talk about Roger Khan and our link. Roger Khan is back here now. Where I thought they had a ton of things that they were talking about. On the other hand, who are the lawyers for these very same guys? They're either Harmon, Basil Williams, Nigel Hughes, James Bond. Any trouble they have, that was in the crime period. And why did Granger not do the commission of inquiry? Then the country would know the truth. But it is, you know what happens? These same people who claim they're journalists, then Granger will go on their programs. And they would say, Mr. President, you look very smart this morning, and throw him some softball questions, and he would even send the questions ahead. They wouldn't ask him a single question. They wouldn't ask him a single question how he sold us out on the oil and gas contract, how he's covering up corruption in almost all the ministries, how he has no plan for job creation, and push him on that issue, and then they would see how hollow his policies are. So I hope that people, they accuse us politicians often of being partisan and raising the temperature. But media should be balanced by its very nature. It should be balanced because if it becomes partisan, then it doesn't have the right to call itself, or a person like that, journalist anymore. Thank you.
Tim Alking, Piper News. A few issues, Mr. Jackson. On your concern about police readiness for PD, have you met directly with the police commissioner?
No, I'm going to write him. I hope that I see him because I know that the assurance, I need to get the assurances directly from him. So I'm going to write him about this. All of the things I mentioned.
Okay. And on the issue of the public-private polling places argument, could we accept that by recommending voting in a neutral environment, the GCOM could have interpreted this to be we should reduce private polling stations?
Yes, you can interpret it. That's a fair interpretation. What is not fair is the disproportionate reduction. That is not fair. And so that is what I said. Okay, even if it did, they said politically neutral.
Right.
how did you apply it this way? How could you have 6 private residences in one village with 2,000 voters, because it happened, and in a village with 7,000 voters, take everyone to vote in a single compound?
Okay.
That's
Ideally, you would prefer a reduction in private polling places.
if you do have public buildings. But why not use like places of worship? Because you don't have many public buildings in rural areas. You know, so they have started by using public like places of worship, churches, temples, mosques, etc. GCOM just takes over, so nobody is there. You know, like your compound is secure, the police, etc. They can do that easily because almost all of our villages have either a church, a temple, or a mosque. Almost every village would have like those things, facilities, maybe 2 or 3 of those. Then you can do that in a fair way. But if you're eliminating private residences, you have to eliminate it from everyone, not just selectively in PPP areas. That was our contention.
Okay, and lastly, on the GDC issue, did the PPP not renew the contract for another 20 years from 2010?
There was no requirement to renew, us to give permission. It's automatic. They had to just write and say the contract is renewed. The contract is automatically renewed. We have no choice. It's enshrined in the contract, the right of automatic renewal.
On the condition that they held to all their contractual obligations, did you know in 2010 that there were several PUC orders showing that they were not adhering to their obligations to provide high quality service throughout the country, and that they had tax obligations since 1990 coming forward?
The thing is that this was automatic. We raised all of those issues at that time. Every issue was raised, but the renewal was not dependent on that. Was not dependent.
But did it not require your approval?
No. If you read the contract, look at the CEO. I saw a post by Mr. Yog Mahadev, and you can use that because it's accurate. It's a post that he made, and he was the CEO of GTNT. I saw he made a post when Cathy Yu said that and shifted the blame to us. They gave 40 years of monopoly. We managed to get in on the cell side because the monopoly, we believe, did not cover the cell services, but it covered the landlines.
So what would you have endeavored to do, or what did you do?
That we started, we said we're going to end the monopoly. So they wanted us to write off all the tax obligations. And we said at that time, we are not going to write off taxes that come out of assessments from GRA. That will be interfering, the executive interfering with GRA. We said taxes arising out of an interpretation of the 1990 agreement. Those we can deal with, but not taxes that are assessed by the GRA. That dragged on. Then we got a team of people to draft the legislation to end the monopoly. Then we had a select committee in Parliament that dealt with it. Carl Greenidge was part of that committee. So we were working together at the level of Parliament. After the government changed, they used the same legislation we drafted to pass it. And then an order had to be made by the minister to do this. So I read, she has not done that. She has not issued the order to give effect to the legislation. People should ask her, why not do it now? Because we have the legislation to end it now in place. So that's one. And two, I read in the Demerara Waves that there is a secret agreement. I've been trying to get this secret agreement. Those are the words, secret agreement. So we will try to, maybe, I don't know what the nature of it, but it seems as though it has to do with taxes.
When did you say you wanted to end the monopoly? Before the renewal?
Well, we said this quite a while back. It was maybe since 2006, we are talking about ending a monopoly. We were advised that there could be potential liability at that time. And that is why, even when Digicel wanted to bring in a fiber optic cable, we got a letter from them of indemnification to say, should it go wrong, that the people of Guyana must not bear the liability should GT&T win a case. Don't remind me to say something else when I'm done with this, because I just got an issue. So that is what we did. The other one, I heard that Banks DIH is on the verge of winning that case because of the decision with DDL. And that means a new government could be faced immediately with a liability of over $28 billion because of a decision made by this government. So I just thinking back, I just remember that. Because
Didn't you see at the time GT&T's failure to adhere to all of its obligations under the contract as grounds to probably reject its...
that is precisely because we work over the years to try to fix things. They argue change in technology at the PUC. Remember, the PUC regulates them. That technology had changed, etc. That is precisely we took the decision to, because you had several negotiations to end this, and they refused to. One led by Do Not Sing when he was Attorney General. So it's not like we didn't try to end the monopoly. And then we took this step that whether they agree or not, we're going to do it. Because we tried to negotiate. It went on for years, the negotiations, back and forth, negotiating positions, coming back and forth. And so I know at least one team that I personally, who used to report to me, was a former Attorney General, Do Not Sing, leading the negotiations with international assistance too on our side. And then we took a position at one time, this can't go on. This can't go on. They're just dragging out these negotiations unreasonably. And that's when we decided to go this route.
So we went up until 2015. You weren't making much progress. The coalition is in the same position.
No, but 2015, we had that legislation before 2015 Parliament. Granger, what's his name? Carl Greenidge was part of that. We passed the legislation now. We can end it. The minister just has to sign the order. That's all she has to do now. That's what has to do, and we work towards that legislation. Ask her why she's not signing the order. That is what Cathy, you should be asked. Why? Is she compromised? I heard that there are other people who are getting licenses, and a lot would be revealed after the elections. I don't want to say more because at this stage, but we have to launch an investigation. We think we know why, but I have not verified it, and I don't want to spread rumors.
Is what you're saying that since they took office, this government was more empowered to end the monopoly?
And they have legislation now. They have legislation.
How precisely did the legislation empower them to?
Because it has a clause that the minister now can bring an end to the legislation by signing the order. You know, most legislation are passed with a trigger date, which the minister can trigger, which a minister can trigger. Okay. So orders often can name a date at which the core legislation is set up for.
And what effect would that order have?
It brings an end to the monopoly. Effectively.
Okay.
I wanted to know, during your meeting with the Commission earlier this week, did you inquire or provide with information on arrangements for registered voters who are working offshore, or even those on remand?
No, we never discussed that, but why just offshore? Why not minors? I don't want to like this business about ExxonMobil getting preferences. Everything we seem to be rolling over, kneeling down for Exxon, etc. You know, this has to stop. They got a prime piece of land at Peppercorn rent. Exxon can't afford that. Are we paying for that headquarter there? You know, we're not going to pay for that headquarter. I'm telling you this now. VP wins office, that big fancy $80 million building, not coming out of cost oil. If you want to live in there, in a fancy building, they pay for it directly from Houston, and not with the PPP. And here it seems as though, why don't they fly? They have helicopters. They're flying all the time in and out. They can fly these kids who are working out there within 1 hour and get them here. And stuff like that. No, but that's what I'm telling you. But some people are claiming preferences. They love to, as soon as these people, they'll take over our country. What about the guy in Imbamadai? He's further away. Should we make a special preference because he's in Georgetown? He's registered in Georgetown, so he can't vote? Our miners in the hinterland? Should we fly them out or give them a special permit now? Why don't, if we want to do it for our people too? So I just don't understand. We keep rolling over. That's what APNU is pushing for. At least the 3 commissioners from APNU. That's what they're pushing for Exxon now. And they wouldn't push for, they're trying to remove people's right to vote or disenfranchise them on the East Coast, but they want to provide special arrangements for Exxon. I can't handle this. It just like makes me upset. Thank you.